I started the case file at 8:42 a.m. sharp. The house was already sealed off when I arrived. Old farmhouse just outside town, with paint peeling off the clapboards like dry skin. A deputy met me at the gate, said the body was in the cellar. "You'll want gloves," he added. I always bring gloves. What I wasn't ready for was the smell. Not decay, hair, burnt hair. The kind you can't mistake once you've smelled it before. I'd smelled it twice in my career. Both times it meant something personal, something ritual. I went down those steps slow, one hand on the rail, the other near my side-on. The cellar wasn't dark. It was lit with string lights, the kind you'd hang for a backyard party. They cast this soft yellow hue over the whole room, like someone wanted the scene to look peaceful. But in the center of that yellow glow, she was hanging. Mid-30s, bare feet, pale toes curled inward. Eyes shut like she'd been put to sleep. But it wasn't the pose that stopped me cold. It was the rope, thick, uneven, strange in texture. I stepped closer and crouched. The rope wasn't store-bought. It was handmade, woven, and running through the twists, clearly visible in the light, were braids, real braids, human hair, long, dark, thick, not just hers. I knew because the shades didn't match. I counted 3 distinct colors, 3 textures, 3 sources. I looked up at the deputy. "Who found her?" he said. "She hadn't paid rent in weeks." Came to check, found the back door ajar. I nodded and stepped back. We'd need a forensic sweep immediately. I radioed dispatch, asked for evidence techs, a hair analyst, and to check missing persons reports for any recent women with long black, brown, or auburn hair. The victim was ID'd fast. Name was Clarissa Bell, 36, school librarian. Quiet, lived alone. No family in town. I took a walk through the rest of the house, trying to get a feel. Kitchen looked undisturbed. Her phone was on the counter, battery dead. No signs of struggle upstairs, but something felt off. Too clean. Too staged. Her diary was open on the dining table. I flipped to the last entry. It was short. Just a single line. I heard them again in the walls. I stopped cold. That wasn't paranoia. That was a breadcrumb. I jotted it down. Checked the walls. Nothing on first glance. Then I ran my fingers along the paneling in the hallway and felt it. A groove. One panel was newer wood, poorly sanded, not original. I slid my knife under the edge and popped it open. Inside was a narrow cavity, and inside that, a bundle, wrapped in plastic. I pulled it out slowly, gloves tight, and unwrapped it. Inside were more braids, 2, each neatly tied at both ends, labeled with names on masking tape. Elsa. Janine. My chest went tight. These weren't just strands. They were trophies. Or warnings. I called it in. "We've got possible linked victims. I need those names checked immediately. Cross-reference with missing persons, local, state, and federal." Then I looked at the wall again. There was more. A line of writing, barely visible, scratched into the wood behind where the bundle had been hidden. I held up my flashlight. It said, "She only takes the quiet ones." I backed out of the hallway and into the fresh air. Something about this case felt layered, ritualistic, patterned, and deliberate. She didn't just die down there. She was chosen, but I didn't know yet by who, or worse, by what. And I hadn't seen the worst part. That would come an hour later, when forensics dusted the floor under the body. The marks weren't random. They were footprints. Small, bare, 3 sets, all pointing toward the noose. None leading away. The footprints under the body didn't make sense. They weren't adult-sized. Each was maybe 6 inches long, bare, heel to toe, pressed into the dusty concrete, like someone had stood there for a long time. But there were 3 sets, 3 distinct directions, all stopping beneath the noose, none of them leading away. That was impossible, unless the bodies vanished, or someone cleaned only those prints. But there were no drag marks, no smears, no water buckets, nothing. Forensics confirmed the prints were untouched, like the dust had been deliberately left intact. That meant someone wanted us to see them. I stepped back from the cellar. It felt colder now, not temperature, something else, like I was being watched. Upstairs, I called dispatch again and asked them to re-verify the names on the taped hair, Elsa and Janine. 10 minutes later, I got a hit. Elsa Mendez, reported missing 4 months ago, lived 1 town over, age 27, last seen leaving her night shift at the textile plant. Never made it home. No sign of struggle. No leads. Then another ping. Janine Horvath, age 31, barista, disappeared 2 weeks ago. No signs of forced entry at her apartment. Laptop was open. Coffee cup still warm. Police thought she left voluntarily. She didn't. She was in that wall, or part of her was. I ordered a sweep of the surrounding properties, asked for any past tenant lists for the farmhouse. I wanted to know who owned the place before Clarissa. Landlord's records were sloppy, mostly cash renters. But one name showed up in old tax files, Maribeth C. No last name, no phone, just a P.O. box. I stared at it. That was the kind of lead that wanted to stay buried. I drove down the records myself and asked the clerk to check any Maribeths tied to the address. After 15 minutes, he came back with one. Maribeth Playmore, born 1959, deceased, died 6 years ago. House had been vacant 2 years before Clarissa moved in. No known relatives. Cause of death. Suicide. Hanging. The word hit me hard. I checked the file. She was found in the cellar. Same place, same method. Different rope. I drove straight back to the scene. Something wasn't right with the timeline. I asked the techs if the string lights in the cellar had been recently installed. They shook their heads. Old wires, one of them said. Found some dated newspaper in the insulation. Early 2005. So, the lights had been there for years. Someone staged this long ago. Someone expected another body. And Clarissa, maybe she was just the most recent. I went back down into the cellar. This time, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Above the beam, right where the noose had hung, there were faint indentations in the wood, notches, carvings, like tally marks. I counted. 13 notches, but only 4 known victims. That left 9. 9 missing. 9 unknown. Unless the other 9 weren't reported, or weren't taken from here. My radio crackled. Detective, you'll want to hear this. Clarissa's laptop just powered on. I sprinted upstairs. The tech had it open on the counter. No password, just one video file on the desktop. Timestamp, 2 nights ago. I hit play. The footage was dim. Clarissa sat in front of the camera, eyes wide, skin pale. She looked terrified. If you're seeing this, she whispered. I didn't do this to myself. She swallowed hard. Something's in the house. It whispers through the walls. At first I thought it was just rats. Then I started finding hair in the sink, on my pillow. Not mine. She looked off screen, like she heard something. Last night, I woke up and couldn't move. I felt them braiding. Something was pulling my hair tight. I couldn't scream. I just cried. She leaned forward. It's not one person. It's them. They come in threes. I saw them once. Bare feet, long arms. They watched me from the edge of the bed, and the screen went black. I stood frozen. The room was silent. That wasn't the confession of a suicidal woman. That was a warning. Clarissa knew something, and she tried to fight it, but they got to her first. I stepped back trying to process, and that's when my phone buzzed. A text from the lab. They'd tested the braids in the noose. 3 sets of DNA, but only 2 matched the identified victims. The third, no match, no ID. Unknown female. Estimated age, 10 to 12. The third DNA sample changed everything. A girl, no name, no file, no reported missing child to match. Somewhere out there, a young girl was either dead or still waiting to be found. I stared at the screen while my stomach twisted. If Clarissa's hair was in that noose, and the other 2 women had vanished months apart, then this little girl had to be part of the pattern. But how did she fit in? And why her? I needed more. I ordered a search of all missing children reported over the last 5 years within a 100-mile radius. Same profile. Female, long hair, age 10 to 12. The report would take time, but I couldn't sit still. I went back down into the cellar. This time, I brought a forensic light and scanned the beams for anything I missed. That's when I found it. On the underside of the support beam, almost invisible unless you were lying flat on your back, was another carving. A shape. 3 circles, interlocking, almost like a symbol. I took a photo and sent it to a contact of mine. Retired detective, used to handle cult-related cases. He called me back 5 minutes later. That's a witch's knot, he said. Old protection symbol, or binding symbol, depending on how it's used. If it's inverted, it's a warning. I checked the photo again. It was inverted. So this wasn't random. Someone was trying to bind something here, or keep something in. I left the cellar with a cold sweat on my neck. The sun had dipped behind the trees. Shadows were longer now. I turned back toward the hallway where I'd found the bundle of hair. Something about the wall still felt off. I tapped along it, listening for hollows. One panel near the floor gave a strange echo. I got down and pried it loose. Dust flew out. Behind it, another cavity. Smaller, and inside it, something strange. A child's shoe. Old, dirty, purple with faded sparkles. And beside it, a ribbon. Black silk. Frayed, braided into the edges. Again were strands of hair. I collected both items carefully and bagged them. This little girl was real. She'd been in this house. The ribbon looked like it had been worn or clutched tight for a long time. I checked the floor below the wall cavity. More dust. And more prints. Small again, but this time only one set, leading from the wall to the center of the room, then stopping. No return prints, just like the others. I called the landlord back, pressed harder this time. Are you sure no one else had access to this house in the last 6 years? He hesitated. Well, there was one guy, he admitted. Odd fella. Said he wanted to film something here. Paid in cash, stayed a few weeks. Always kept the curtains shut. This was maybe 2 years ago. I gritted my teeth. Name? Didn't give one. Just said to call him Mare. Mary Beth Claymore. Could be nothing. Could be everything. I had dispatch run a trace on that P.O. box from earlier. Maybe someone still checked it. Maybe the name wasn't dead, after all. But before I got the call back, something else happened. A noise. In the cellar. I was upstairs, but I heard it. Soft. Rhythmic. Like a thud. Then a drag. I grabbed my flashlight and went back down, careful not to step on any evidence markers. It was quiet again. Too quiet. I scanned the room. Nothing moved. But the noose, now hanging limp, was swaying slightly. Not like from a breeze, from momentum. Something had touched it, or someone. I drew in a slow breath. Then, just as I turned to go, my radio buzzed. Detective, we've got a problem. The P.O. box you asked about, it was checked an hour ago. And we've got it on camera. I froze. Show me. They sent the footage. Grainy, low resolution, but clear enough. A figure in a long coat, hood up, moving quickly. But as they turned toward the exit, the light caught their face, or part of it. Not a man, a woman. Hair long and dark, eyes wide. And under one, I zoomed in on the frame until the pixels blurred. It was the same shoe, identical down to the scuffed glitter patch on the side. I checked the timestamp again. 1 hour ago. Whoever she was, she'd been watching. She either knew I'd find the shoe, or she wanted me to. That meant she wasn't finished. I called the post office manager. He confirmed the P.O. box had been opened regularly, never by the same person twice. Sometimes a woman, sometimes a man, sometimes a kid. Always disguised, always quiet. No ID, just the right key. This wasn't one person. This was a network, or a ritual. I called the sheriff's office and requested surveillance on the post office, and a stakeout team posted there until further notice. Then I turned back to the video. The woman's face was visible. Barely. But it wasn't just the shoe under her arm that caught my attention. It was what she wore around her neck. A necklace, thick and braided. Not metal, not plastic. Hair. It wasn't jewelry. It was a sign. A signal. Something to mark her, or claim her. I needed eyes on her now. I forwarded the footage to facial recognition. The AI pulled 5 possible matches. All dead. Officially. Overdoses. Car accidents. 1 listed as drowned. The bodies were all found, but 2 weren't identified visually. Burned or bloated beyond recognition. That meant someone used their identities. Or worse. Staged the deaths. And now they were moving through towns unnoticed. I was chasing ghosts. I needed a break. Something real. Something present. I went back to Clarissa's file. There had to be something I missed. Then, I found it. An email. Unread. Saved in drafts. Not sent. It was addressed to someone named May. 1 line. They told me I'd be number 13, but I found the wall. I found the ribbon. I know about the girl. I stared at it. Clarissa wasn't just a victim. She was a witness. She found what I found. She tried to stop it. But how did she know she'd be 13? That number again. 13 notches. 13 names. 13 days. My phone buzzed again. Lab results. Partial match on the child's DNA. Distant cousin located in Kentucky. No known siblings. No parents on file. Child was never reported missing. Possibly raised off-grid. Or stolen early, which meant someone was collecting them. Quiet ones. Isolated ones. People no one would miss. And now they'd gotten to Clarissa. The post office camera had one more frame, captured as the woman in the hoodie passed a man at the door. For just a second, they exchanged something. A glance. A folded slip of paper. The man walked away fast. We got his plates. I ran the tags. Rental car. Used a fake ID. Name, Henry Miles. Age, 42. No criminal record, but his billing address linked to an abandoned home 2 counties over. I grabbed my gear and drove. It was nearly midnight when I reached the property. Wooded. Quiet. No lights. I parked half a mile out and hiked the rest on foot. The house was a 2-story shack. Boards on the windows. Door half rotated. I crept up the porch and knocked once. Nothing. Then again. Still silence. I turned the knob. It gave. Inside, the air was thick. Not foul, but old. Like the house hadn't been lived in but had never truly emptied. I stepped in. The floor creaked. No furniture. Just a small table in the center of the room, and on it, a single object. A braid, laid in a circle, carefully arranged. And beside it, a Polaroid. I picked it up. It showed a girl. Big eyes. Braided hair. Mouth stitched closed with black thread. And scrawled at the bottom in red ink. One word. 14. That was when I heard the floorboards upstairs creak. Not once. Not old wood shifting. Footsteps. Careful. Slow. Then a second sound. Higher pitch. A child's laugh. Very soft. Very close. On, tucked tight, was a small purple shoe. I stood frozen. Polaroid still in my hand. The laugh wasn't playful. It wasn't the sound of a happy child. It was thin. Mechanical. Like something imitating what laughter should sound like. I tucked the photo into my pocket and moved toward the stairs, keeping my flashlight low. No creaks now. Whoever, or whatever, had moved, was waiting. I climbed slowly, one step at a time, hand on my weapon. The upstairs hallway was narrow, lined with peeling wallpaper and dust-covered picture frames. Family portraits, except the faces had been scratched out. Every one of them. I reached the last door at the end of the hall. Slightly ajar. From inside, a rhythmic sound. Thump, drag, thump, drag. Like someone shifting something heavy across the floor. I pushed the door open with the back of my hand and stepped in. The room was empty, except for a mattress on the floor and a box fan in the window spinning idly. But in the far corner, half hidden behind a torn sheet tacked to the ceiling, was a figure. Small, kneeling, back turned, hair long, black, tangled. I called out gently. No answer. I stepped closer. My boots didn't make a sound on the carpet, but the figure must have sensed me. It stilled. Slowly, it turned its head, but only halfway, like its neck couldn't move the rest of the way. The face was blank, smooth, no mouth, no eyes, just a waxy surface where a face should have been. Then I blinked, and it was gone. The corner was empty, just dust and a pile of old rope. I backed out fast. I don't scare easy, but this wasn't normal. I'd spent 20 years on the force, seen bodies burned beyond recognition, men torn apart in car wrecks, women left for dead in motel bathrooms. But this felt like stepping into someone else's nightmare. I snapped photos, grabbed the rope, and got out. I was halfway down the stairs when my phone buzzed. It was the facial recognition lab again. "We got something," the tech said, her voice flat. "That woman at the P.O. box, the one with the shoe, we ran her image one more time. She wasn't dead. She was missing." "Go on." "Name was Martha Linton. Vanished in 1999, age 12. Went to summer camp, never came back. You won't believe where she was last seen." "Where?" "Clarissa's hometown." My blood ran cold. This went back further than we thought. 25 years at least. I asked for everything they had on Martha. Photos, family, old police reports. While I waited, I scanned the rope I'd just found. It was handmade again, but thinner, child-sized, braided with something. I held it to the light. It wasn't just hair. It was thread, red and black, woven tight like veins through muscle, and tucked deep inside one of the braids, barely visible, was a tooth. Small, human, a child's. The room started to tilt. I stepped back and dropped the rope into an evidence bag. My phone lit up again. Email from the local morgue. They'd done another scan of Clarissa's scalp. The braid work was deeper than cosmetic. Someone had sewn it into her skull while she was still alive. They called it ritual interlacing. I'd only heard of it once. A retired profiler I knew in Quantico mentioned it in passing. Cases where cult victims were prepped like offerings, not killed outright. Prepared, groomed, marked. And those braids weren't just trophies. They were signatures. Each braid a chain in the pattern. And I was starting to suspect there wasn't just one person doing this. There was a cycle, a handoff, from child to adult, from victim to vessel, from silence into the rope. But what chilled me most wasn't what I found in the house. It was what I heard when I played back my body cam footage that night. In the background, faint under my own breathing, right before I left that upstairs room, was a whisper. Not words, just counting, slow, deliberate. 10, 11, 12, then silence, then a final word. Soft, close, in a voice I didn't recognize. 14. I played the audio back 3 more times, each one slower than the last. The whisper wasn't a glitch. It wasn't the wind. It was deliberate. And whoever said 14 said it as if they already knew who it was going to be. I wasn't supposed to hear that voice, but I had, and now I couldn't unhear it. Something told me I wasn't looking for a killer anymore. I was following a system, one that had already chosen its next name. I grabbed the evidence bags, backed up the body cam footage, and started making calls. I needed the profiler in Quantico. I needed anyone who had studied group psychosis, rural cult behaviors, anything remotely similar. Most of them didn't return my call. The one that did, a woman named Dr. Evelyn Shaw, asked only one question before she agreed to fly in. How many braids did you say there were? When I told her about the rope, the ribbon, the necklace at the post office, and the mattress in the shack, she went quiet for a full 10 seconds. Then she said, "That's a braid chain. It's rare. Old. You're not dealing with one killer, detective. You're dealing with a lineage." The word hit hard. Lineage. I thought about Clarissa's note again. They told me I'd be number 13. That meant she'd spoken to someone, maybe more than one, which meant the whisper on the tape, 14, wasn't just symbolic. It was a literal count. I went back through the footage from the farmhouse, looking at things I might have missed. That's when I spotted it. Near the edge of the cellar, on a dusty shelf behind the noose, sat a small wooden box. At the time, it looked like junk. I hadn't touched it. But now, frame by frame, I could see something. It was carved, symbols, circles, the same ones as the knot, and painted beneath it, in faded crimson, was a name, May, same name from Clarissa's unsent email. I drove back to the house in the middle of the night. I didn't wait for backup. I just needed that box. When I got there, the house was dark, but the front door was open an inch. I drew my weapon and stepped inside. The air was colder than before. Not cool, cold, like something had opened a door that shouldn't be opened. I took the stairs 2 at a time and crept into the cellar. The string light still flickered faintly overhead. The noose was gone. So was the shelf. But the box was sitting in the center of the floor, like someone had placed it there just for me. I approached slowly, checking every corner. No sound, no movement. I knelt, lifted the lid. Inside was a bundle wrapped in yellowing cloth. I peeled it back. Another braid. This one small, knotted at both ends. And beneath it, a photograph. Not old, recent, taken in daylight. It showed a girl sitting on a swing, hair in 2 tight braids, smiling. The location was familiar. I looked closer. The trees, the fence, the church steeple in the distance. It was the playground behind the elementary school. I was there just last week giving a talk, and I recognized the girl. Her name was Kayla. She was 9, and she'd asked me for a badge sticker when I left. My hands went numb. There was something else tucked under the photo. A torn piece of lined paper, written in pencil, shaky and uneven. "She's quiet. She's perfect. We pick her on Friday." I checked the date. It was I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I sat in my cruiser with the photo of Kayla in one hand and the note in the other, staring at the date over and over. We pick her on Friday. That was tomorrow. Less than 24 hours. I radioed dispatch and requested immediate contact information for Kayla's family. They were hesitant. Privacy policy, chain of custody. I didn't care. I identified myself, cited an active abduction threat, and they relented. The mother's name was Melanie Price, single parent. Worked night shifts at the care home off Route 11. I drove straight there. The nurse at the front desk told me Melanie had clocked out early after a stomach bug. I was back on the road in seconds. 10 minutes later, I pulled up to their apartment complex. Lights were on inside, second-story window. I took the stairs 2 at a time and knocked, hard. A woman opened the door, mid-30s, tired eyes, robe still on. I held up my badge. "Melanie Price?" She nodded. "Is Kayla home right now?" She looked panicked for a second, then stepped aside. "She's asleep. What's going on?" I showed her the photo, the one from the grade box. "Do you recognize this picture?" She took one look and dropped her mug. It shattered on the floor. "Where did you get that?" "Answer the question, man. Did you take this photo?" She looked pale. No, I've never seen that photo in my life. "But that's your daughter." "Yes, that's Kayla. That's our backyard swing. But I didn't take that." I stepped inside carefully and closed the door behind me. "Who's been around her lately? Anyone new? Anyone she's mentioned by name?" Melanie sank into the couch, rubbing her temples. "She mentioned someone. A woman. Said she helped her fix her shoelace after school last week. I didn't think anything of it." "Did you say a name?" "No. Just said the woman had long hair. Real long. And wore a necklace made of rope. I thought she meant yarn or something." I was already moving toward Kayla's room. "Stay here," I said. Melanie followed, eyes wide. Kayla was in bed, curled on her side. Peaceful. I scanned the room quickly. No signs of entry. Window locked. I stepped closer. That's when I saw it. Tucked under her pillow, just barely visible. A black ribbon, frayed on the edges. Same thread. Same hair woven pattern. My stomach turned. I gently lifted the pillow. Underneath was a small piece of brown paper, folded 4 times. I opened it. One word. "Soon." I turned to Melanie. "We're not safe here." I made the call. Kayla and her mother were placed into protective custody within the hour. Unmarked car. Undisclosed location. I stayed behind. I knew they weren't coming for her that night. The note said Friday. That meant they followed rules. Patterns. They were bold, but not reckless. I had time. Barely. I drove straight to the precinct. I needed surveillance footage from the school, from the post office, from every corner store within a 10-mile radius of the park where the photo had been taken. And I needed it fast. The IT guy on duty, Roberts, owed me a favor. He let me watch the feeds with him. Started with the school drop-off loop. Nothing odd for 2 days. Then on the 3rd day, there she was, standing across the street from the school gates. Hood up. Same long coat. Same slow turn of her head. In her left hand was a camera. Big, analog, like the ones used for Polaroids. I zoomed in. Her eyes weren't just watching. They were following. Every kid that walked past her, she watched. But only one made her blink. Kayla. I watched the footage frame by frame. As Kayla passed, the woman stepped forward, took a photo, and stepped back into the alley. A second figure met her. Shorter, lighter build, young, possibly another girl. The two disappeared into a black van parked near the alley mouth. No plates, no make, no model. The footage glitched, static, then resumed. Van gone. That wasn't chance. That was deliberate signal jamming. These people knew surveillance, and they'd done this before. I had Robert scrub the glitch and isolate the frames before the interference. One blurry still showed a sticker on the van's bumper, a red circle with a diagonal slash through it. In the center, braided rope. It wasn't random. It was a mark. I sent it to Shaw, the profiler. She called me back within minutes. "That's an old rejection sigil," she said. "It means the offering was rejected. It's rare. Fringe cults used it when a subject didn't meet the criteria. Sometimes they leave it on the doors of houses, or carved into trees near towns they've abandoned." "So you're saying they tried this before?" "Yes. And someone didn't pass. Could Clarissa have been one of those?" There was silence on the line. "No, Clarissa was accepted. They always braid the accepted." That line chilled me. "So Kayla's next? If they marked her," she said, "then yes. But here's what matters. If you've disrupted the cycle, they won't try again in the same way. They'll escalate. Move faster. Change the method. Which means tomorrow might not be Friday anymore." "Exactly." I hung up and leaned back in the chair. I had less than 24 hours to find people who moved like shadows, carved warnings in walls, and braided their dead into rope. The only thing I had left was the woman in the hoodie. I opened the case files. Martha Linton, the 12-year-old girl who went missing in 1999. There had to be something in her disappearance. Something I missed. I read every word of the original police report. Her camp bunkmates said she went to the woods to collect pine cones. Never came back. No signs of struggle. But one girl mentioned something strange. Martha said she heard whispering in the trees, and she braided her hair real tight before she went out. I felt my throat dry up. I checked the names of every girl in that cabin. Only one had a last name I recognized. Bell, as in Clarissa Bell, the victim in the cellar. Same age, same summer, same camp. I felt like something hit me in the chest. This wasn't random. Clarissa and Martha weren't strangers. They knew each other. They started it together, but only one came back. And now, only one was still braiding. I parked 3 blocks from the station. I didn't want to be anywhere near that evidence room just yet. The braid sat in the back seat, sealed, tagged, staring at me like a coiled animal. I couldn't shake the feeling that carrying it meant more than just possessing evidence. It felt like I'd been handed something sacred, or cursed. I lit a cigarette, first one in 3 years, and sat there in the dark, letting the smoke do what it could. The photo of Kayla was in my pocket. I kept checking it, like maybe the girl's face would tell me something different this time. But it never did. She was still smiling, still swinging, still completely unaware of what had been chosen for her. And that word was stuck in my head now. Chosen. Not targeted, not hunted. Chosen. There was an order to it. A belief. Like each girl wasn't just taken, but offered. I called Shaw again, even though it was late. She picked up fast, like she'd been waiting. I told her everything. About the camp photo, the surviving camper, the tattoo, the names matching up with the braid tags. When I mentioned May was in that photo too, she stopped me. You're sure? Clear as day, I said. 7 girls, 4 confirmed victims, 1 survivor, 1 missing, 1 orchestrating. She went quiet. Then, that's a completed circle. What do you mean? I asked. When a ritual chain is broken, it reforms with the original participants. That's how lineage rituals work. Clarissa tried to undo it. May is trying to finish it. The last braid isn't just symbolic. It's a lock. Whoever holds it seals the circle. I stared at the sealed evidence bag in my back seat. Then I've got the lock. No, she said. You've got the invitation. I ended the call and started driving. I didn't know where I was going until I realized my hands had taken me back to Clarissa's house. The crime scene tape was still on the door. The cellar was cold, quiet, but I didn't go down this time. I stood in the hallway, right where she'd hidden the bundles in the wall. I pressed my hand to the panel again. Nothing. The groove was gone. Seamless, like no one had ever carved it. I stepped back. The air shifted behind me. No sound, just presence. I turned. No one. But on the floorboards near the door, bare footprints. Small, fresh, just disturbed in a perfect line, leading out. I followed them. Out the door, down the steps, into the yard, then to the edge of the woods. They stopped at the base of an old oak tree. Carved into the trunk, a braid. Underneath it, 1 word, my last name. Back at the station, I told myself I was being paranoid, that the print was old, that someone was trying to mess with me. I sat at my desk, going over the files again. Janine, Tammy, Martha, Clarissa, May. 7 girls, 7 stories, all converging here. The braid box was still sealed, still evidence, but I couldn't leave it in the open. Not after what Shaw said. I brought it home, locked it in a cabinet in my garage. No ceremony, no second thoughts. I just wanted to sleep. But I couldn't. Around 3:13 a.m., I woke up gasping, not from a nightmare, from the pressure, like someone was standing over me. I sat up, flicked on the lamp. Room was empty. House was dead silent. I checked every lock. Nothing broken. Nothing missing. Except one thing. On my bathroom mirror, drawn in something greasy, were 3 interlocking circles. Below them, a single red braid, pressed flat against the glass like it had been glued there. Not one from the box. A new one, short, thin, and still damp. I turned slowly, heart in my throat. My bedroom door creaked shut behind me. No one on the other side, just silence. And then from the hallway, soft as breath, came a child's voice. 14 is waiting. That's when I realized I was holding something in my right hand. Cone. wrapped in long black hair that wasn't mine, and the braid had already started. I didn't know how long I stood there in front of the mirror. The braid on the glass was fresh, drawn in something thick and oily, and the comb in my hand was still warm, coiled with black hair that didn't belong to me. I hadn't touched that comb since the evidence room. I hadn't brought it home. I hadn't even thought about it since I locked it away. But here it was, and the worst part wasn't how it got into my hand. The worst part was the quiet, the kind of silence that settles over a room when someone has just left, the kind that's too still, like the air hasn't recovered from being watched. I stared at the numbers scratched into the corner of the mirror, 1999, and tried to tell myself I was just tired, that my mind was filling in gaps. But the grease hadn't come from my hands. And the voice I heard in the hallway, the child's voice saying, 14 is waiting, wasn't a memory. I felt the breath behind it. I felt it in my bones. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat at my kitchen table with the lights off and the comb sealed inside a freezer bag, trying to decide if I was still an investigator or if I'd become evidence myself. At sunrise, I drove out to the last location listed in the Martha Linton file. Not her school, not her home. The place she vanished, Camp Dalebrook, the summer camp from 1999, the one where Clarissa, Jameen, Martha, and May had all been girls in the same cabin. It had been shut down years ago. Nature had swallowed most of it. Weeds through the floorboards, moss on the cabins, rusted sign barely hanging. I didn't ask permission. I parked outside the rusted gate and walked in. The cabins were still labeled in white paint, A, B, C. Cabin C had a cracked window and a dead wasp nest above the door frame. I didn't go inside. I followed the old trail behind it, worn but not forgotten. Trees had grown close around it, but the path hadn't vanished. It had been walked. Someone had kept it open. I walked for 20 minutes through thick brush until the trail widened into a clearing. In the center was a massive oak tree. At its base, a circle of stones, and carved into the trunk, almost hidden by bark and time, were braids. Dozens of them. Braided lines etched into the wood, each one slightly different. Underneath a few, initials. Some I recognized, CB, JH, ML. Then I saw one with no initials, just 3 interlocking circles and a short, fresh line beneath it, unfinished. I melted the stone ring and swept the dead leaves aside. Inside the ring were ashes, still warm. I sifted through with a stick, black threads, hair. The braid had been burned here. Someone had ended a chain, or started one. Then I heard breathing behind me. Not close, not rushed, just patient. I stood up slowly and turned. A woman stood at the edge of the clearing. Her hair hung long and straight, black as oil. Her coat brushed the leaves as the breeze passed. She didn't run. She didn't speak. She raised her hand and held something out. A braid. Short, fresh, still dripping. Then, as if the moment had passed, she let it fall into the ash ring and turned away. She walked into the woods like she'd been here before, like she belonged to the trees. I didn't follow. I couldn't. I just watched her go and listened to the quiet that followed. I should have called it in. I should have taken photos, collected the braid, alerted Shaw, the station, anyone. But I didn't. Something told me it wasn't meant to be collected. It had been delivered. It was a warning, or a release, both. I drove home without speaking to anyone. When I pulled into my driveway, I noticed something small on the front porch. A ribbon, black, folded once in the center like a bow. I didn't touch it. I left it there. I stepped inside and locked the door behind me. I locked it twice. I turned every light on in the house and checked each room. Empty. Clean. Normal. But it didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like I'd stepped into someone else's life and shut the door behind me. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked up. The mirror was clean now. No circles. No braid. Just my reflection. Tired and thin. And then I noticed it. A tightness behind my ear. I reached up. There, at the base of my hairline, was something woven, small, subtle, a single braid. My fingers shook as I unraveled it. It didn't hurt, but it burned, like pulling out something that had rooted into the skin. I stared at it in my palm. It wasn't long, but it was mine. My hair, braided while I slept. No one had broken in. No one had come through the door. I checked the windows, all locked. Alarm still armed. There had been no point of entry, because they didn't need one. They were already inside. At 2:43 a.m., I received a text from a blocked number. It was a photo. A Polaroid. The edges were worn, the focus blurry, but I could make out my own bedroom, my body lying asleep, and above me, leaning in close, was the same woman from the clearing, eyes open, watching. The caption on the bottom of the photo read, 14 sleeps like the others. I didn't move for a long time. I just sat there with the photo in one hand and the braid in the other. 14 wasn't waiting anymore. 14 had already been chosen. 14 was me. I didn't go to the precinct that morning. I didn't call Shaw. I didn't check on Kayla or review surveillance or draft a report. I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the braid on the counter. The one I pulled from behind my ear. The one I'd found tied to my mirror. And the one that wasn't there the night before. I sat with it like it was a weapon I didn't know how to use. All I could think about was that photo, my bedroom, my body, that woman's face in the shadows above me. The way her eyes stared not with hate, not with hunger, but with peace, like something had ended or passed on. I kept telling myself this was the moment I was supposed to fight, that there was still time to break whatever pattern I had wandered into. But deep down, I knew the truth. I hadn't stumbled into the ritual. I'd been walked into it, one step at a time. Every clue, every rope, every hair, each one tied a little tighter. Each one offered, not hidden. The message hadn't been about stopping the chain. It had been about finishing it. I opened my drawer and removed the original braid from Clarissa's case. It was still sealed, still tagged, but it didn't feel like evidence anymore. It felt like inheritance. I drove without thinking, instinct in the driver's seat. I passed roads I'd known all my life and couldn't name a single one. My hands moved without permission, and when I stopped the car, I wasn't surprised where I was. Clarissa's house. Crime scene tape gone. Doors unlocked. No one there. Just stillness. The cellar was colder than I remembered. Not a natural cold. The kind that settles in places where memory doesn't die. I sat on the cellar steps, braid in hand, and waited. For an hour, maybe more. The shadows didn't shift. The air didn't breathe. But I felt her arrive before I saw her. The woman from the woods. The girl from the camp. May. She stepped down the stairs like they were familiar. She didn't speak. She didn't smile. She sat across from me and nodded once. I thought you'd run, she said. I shook my head. You kept the braid. I didn't answer. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small wooden box, identical to the one Clarissa left behind. She placed it gently on the floor between us and opened it. Inside was a mirror, cracked, streaked. A piece of paper lay folded on top. She unfolded it and held it out to me. It was the camp photo, the same one I'd studied. 7 girls, cabin C. Only now, there were 8. But the 8th stood just behind the others. Faded, almost a smudge, but the face was mine. You've always been here, she whispered. I stared at the photo. This isn't real. She tilted her head. It doesn't matter. She placed the last braid into the box and slid it toward me. It's time. For what? For someone else to carry it. I didn't take the braid. I didn't touch the box, but I didn't leave either. Because I understood. I wasn't a victim. I wasn't a savior. I was a link. The 14th. Not the end. The beginning of the next loop. May stood up. Her job was done. She climbed the stairs, slow and careful, and didn't look back. I didn't follow. I sat there in the dark until the sun changed the color of the dust. I listened to the boards settle, and the string lights buzz, and the faint echo of a child's voice counting from somewhere that didn't echo in the real world. 10, 11, 12, 13, and then the cellar went silent. I took the braid, placed it in my coat, and left the house through the back door. I didn't go home. I didn't go anywhere familiar. I drove until I saw the school crosswalk. Children poured from the building in small clusters, chattering, laughing, swinging their backpacks like nothing was wrong with the world. I stayed in the car. I didn't move. I just watched. One girl trailed behind the others, quiet, alone, long black hair and 2 loose braids. She stopped at the curb and looked around, unsure where to go. I rolled down my window. I didn't speak. I didn't wave. I just watched her. And she watched me. Not afraid. Not curious. Like she already knew. 14 ends. 15 begins.